I didn't realize until last year that I was living my life based on a version of myself that doesn't exist anymore. I thought I had healed, but I was still acting on habits that I had learned from my past. And I don't think that I'm the only one who does this. I'm sure a lot of us have shared this experience. But up until recently, I was the person that would say, well, I am labeled this person because I am this way because I've always been this way. This is the kind of person that I am. And we cling to these identities in order to feel some semblance of control in times of our lives where maybe we didn't have so much of that. And then we often forget that those identities were formed during times of our life where we were just trying to survive. You see, my childhood, like I'm sure many others, was very toxic. It was traumatic. It was turbulent. We had this running joke in our house that when things would go well for a certain period of time, my father would joke that it's the calm before the storm. And oftentimes he was right, but I suppose that's what happens when you're a person that manifests that for yourself. You see, at the time, I lived to please others. I lived to make people proud who set goals that I would never necessarily reach, because the moment I would become closer to the goal, the further away that they would set the goalpost. I've talked about a lot of that in previous videos, and as you can see, it was a pattern in my life, and it was something that I ended up adopting for myself. Among many, many other things. Many habits, many violent ways of communicating, many victimizations of myself that overall don't benefit me as a human or as an artist. And as these habits followed me into my adult life, I took them literally and I fell into them as a sort of pillar to stand on in order to navigate through my life. And unfortunately, it allowed myself to sabotage myself. Of course, I take full responsibility for my actions. Because while some things may not be our fault, it is our responsibility to take care of what is presented to us in our lives. For those who don't know, that is a theme and principle that is talked about in the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a You can fill in the blank on the last word there. That book is written by an author named Mark Manson. You should check it out after you watch this video, maybe. But before taking responsibility for these things, they caused perfectionism to run my life. I caused perfectionism to run my life before I realized that that's what I was doing. I caused a lot of, like I said before, self-sabotage. Details I won't be getting into in this video. I was living in so much fear of being seen, fear of being perceived. When ironically, before that time in my life where I was growing and very slowly unraveling these themes that I'm talking about presently, I did not have these fears. They grew within me and I allowed them to grow and I latched on to them. Why? That's not something that I necessarily really care to know anymore. As an artist, I was not creating freely. I was creating very much from a self-made fear that was taught to me and that at the time I had not yet learned to unteach within myself. Learn new patterns and new habits to slowly snuff out the old patterns and habits that were not benefiting me. There was even a time in my life where I heavily considered giving up art altogether and forcing myself to work in jobs or industries that would conform to the life that I was living in at the time. At some point, we have to ask ourselves, is this really who we are? We have to accept that heaviness within us, that disdain for ourselves really is a cry for help from our inner soul, possibly even our inner child. Something else I've talked about in a previous video, by the way. And this acceptance is very difficult, at least it was for me, Maybe for others it might come a little bit easier, but don't let that difficulty hold you back from the beautiful garden that grows after a rainstorm. People think that within healing and within growth that we want to forget our past, we want to erase the things that have happened before. However, what I have found is that it's not about erasing or forgetting your past. It's about separating yourself from the identity that it created through trial and error, and unfortunately through hurting people in my interpersonal relationships. At the time, I did not realize the destruction that I was causing, and now I take responsibility for it. While these things from my past may explain my current behavior, I am choosing to not allow it to define me any longer. There's no good or healthy reason for me to cling to a version of myself that was surviving when I'm no longer surviving. I'm living, I'm breathing, and I'm presently here in the now. And while it's only been several months that I've truly been trying to move within this wisdom, trying to truly meditate on it and see how I can apply it to my life every day, I have become so much more free within myself, within my art. I'm connecting to pieces of myself that were suppressed during that period of survival. I truly am accepting more openness, more willingness to try new things and meet new people, to see others as my comrades and to love them as they are, no matter how much of a stranger they are to me or how dear or close they are to me. But I need to remind you that this is an active practice every day. It's not a switch that you turn on and it stays on. It's more like a rowboat that you have to row the oars, not quickly. You're not running from danger, but it's just a steady motion that you have to stay consistent with if you want to find yourself at the destination that you're seeking at the end of the river. So I wanted to remind you, you're not the person that you were in the past. That person is in the past. You are who you are now, living in the present. And I encourage you to take responsibility for your past, but to not let it define you. To not let that be the version that you're living in now as you build yourself and heal and grow. And lastly, but most importantly, you're allowed to grow. You're allowed to give yourself that permission. Give yourself permission to give yourself permission to grow. Thank you so much for watching today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Anna. I am a working artist, and on my channel, I talk about art, mental health, healing from trauma, life growth, and I will be dropping creative projects in between. If any of this sounds of interest to you, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd really love to hear from you and build a community here on this channel where we can all just be open with our thoughts, ideas, and our presence. I will see you all very soon. All right, bye.